As I said, I'm circulating this notebook, and you just can put your name here so that we will know how many people will be attending the dinner tonight, so that we can make a reservation. I don't know, maybe I start from this, and then you pass it over, and when it's all finished, you send to me. Don't be shy. If you don't want to go, no problem, but we'll be very welcome. Nobody is forced to go. It's just spontaneous. We would appreciate to have your company, but don't feel obliged to go if you don't want to go, right? Just an opportunity to have some more interaction among ourselves. With that said, we get a great pleasure to have Giuseppe Munda. You know that we have the project Maestri, right? And it's about, and Catrinel is the chair of the project, Management Systems in Environmental Remediation. And the title of the project, Maestri, is dedicated to Giuseppe because he's Italian and he's like a maestro. So under his guidance, we will be introduced to social criteria evaluation and the Socrates software. Giuseppe, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Horst. And I didn't realize that Maestri was in my honor, so thank you. But I'm very happy to participate in that project. I think we are doing really very interesting work together, so thanks to Horst and Catherine to invite me to participate in that project. So, basically between today and tomorrow we will see what social multi-criteria evaluation is and how to implement it in practice also with a piece of software I will show you, okay? So we go slowly more and more down to earth approaches, okay? We saw, if we make, let's say, a very practical conclusion for what we saw this couple of days. Yesterday, the first day, we saw what environmental remediation and decommission is, the main principles, and we saw that it's multidimensional concept. Yesterday and today, we saw a lot about sustainability, circular economy, and again, we had a main conclusion. If you want to assess sustainability, it's a multidimensional concept. You need at least to use a lot of indicators in operational terms. We saw yesterday and also today that sustainability might be a complex concept. At the global level, it's very difficult to assess, to finally decide if we are sustainable or not at planetary level. My personal idea that is already we are not that sustainable. We are, as also today was seen, no? We are beyond the scale of the planet probably. But in operational terms, in local application, in regional application, how we can try to modify our behavior, how we can assess the consequences of what we do in a way where that we get more and more sustainable. You saw yesterday that the decommissioning, that the environmental remediation implies a lot of indicators. You saw it with Paul yesterday. And today, again, circular economy was there, and one of the ways to assess circular economy is life cycle assessment of products. I'm sure you know it. And again, there is a plurality of indicators involved. So the main issue is how we manage this plurality of indicators and how we arrive at decisions. Okay? So going down to earth at this point implies not only understanding a problem, we have a problem, we have a description, what in the modeling area we could call the descriptive model. We try to understand the problem, we describe that problem in a But then the issue is, can we change the world? Can we do something to change our behavior, the consequences of our behavior, and to get something? Of course, then we are in the normative world, okay? We are using models to take decisions. That's a very important difference, okay? One thing is trying to understand the world, the other is trying to modify the world. Now we are in the policy area, so how we can take decisions that in principle are good decisions. As I told yesterday, okay, it's not that easy. What is a good decision? Probably we should say what is a reasonable decision and how we assess this reasonable decision. Okay, this is exactly the world of decision theory, and in particular a branch of it that is called multi-criteria decision analysis. This is the main work I'm doing at the Commission. As I said in the first day, I'm leading a so-called decision analysis lab where we develop tools and we support the Commission to take decisions. Most of my life I was a university professor, so more a scholar and in the academic world. When I moved to the Commission, I think what is the main difference between university and research center linked to policy is exactly this. You have a policy maker, no? And you have a policy maker to work with and to support. So you see both sides of the medal, okay? What is the theory? What is the science that you can use to support the decision, and then which are the way what the policymaker wants from it, okay? So the basic of any decision is the objective. What we want to implement, how we want to change the world. According to what you want, then you have to build a decision model. So that's a very important point, okay? You need to have an objective. So, in general, multi-criteria decision analysis implies a number of options. For example, you had to fly to Yerevan, okay? You probably had the plurality of options, of possibility of flights. How you decide which one to choose? This probably depends on a plurality of criteria, which is from the economic side the most expensive or cheapest, which is the safer airline according to your opinion, which is more comfortable, which is the time, if it is a direct flight or not, etc., etc. So we can imagine a lot of cases where we took decisions in our personal life, and these decisions were taken according to various criteria. It's finally a common sense. No, we never use just one criterion in our everyday life. So this is exactly the point that we have to consider. We may use a decision model and even a multi-criteria decision model for our individual decisions, to buy a new mobile phone, to rent a house, to buy a new car. So we might have a lot of cases where we may have exactly this model. Different options, a plurality of criteria. We have in a way to aggregate this criteria to arrive at a decision. But things might be more and more difficult, which is the difference between individual and social decisions. And why there is this need to talk about multi-criteria decision analysis and social multi-criteria decision analysis. Of course, if it is my decision, things are still complex, but are also easy to model. Because it's clear which are the options, it's clear which are the criteria that for me are important. I can also decide that some criteria are more important than others, and then I can arrive at the decision. So everything depends on my own preference. But then imagine a very simple case, your family, okay? You need to plan holidays, and it's not your only individual preferences that are important, because maybe I like to go to the beach, okay? So I will, maybe if you ask me where you want to go on holidays, I will sit for sure at the seaside. Then we may decide if I'm a quieter sea or something more with waves, etc. But I'm sure I want to go there. So options are clear. When I have to plan holidays with the whole family, it becomes much more complex. Okay, which options? Well, I would like to go to the seaside, but my wife, for example, is more a mountain person. So we have completely different options. The rest of the family with the children have other possibilities. So, for example, my daughter likes a lot to visit cities. Okay? So, immediately you see that when you have different actors, everything becomes much more complex. Two, as we saw yesterday with Catrinelle, why it is so important to involve social actors, why it is important to consider ethical issues. That's exactly the point. If the decision is not individual anymore, it's a community decision. Even if it's a small community like a family, then imagine if it is an urban planning, a regional planning, a national issues, energy planning of a country, becomes much more difficult because options are different. Okay, you can produce energy with completely different energy sources. This is not only a technical issue, it's also social issues, what different people would like to see and to have. And then there is the issue of how we decide which criteria are relevant, okay? Then, if we have to plan a holiday in the family, we start thinking about probably the budget, how much money we can spend, okay? This will be relevant for my children, but very important for me, for example, okay? So, we have different criteria, but these different criteria come also from different preferences. So, to say which criteria are more or less important is not that easy. There are ethical issues implied. Why a given criteria that is important for a given social actor should weigh more than others? As we saw yesterday, sustainability of what implies sustainability of who. So, this is the main reason why we use the word social multi-criteria evaluation. Okay? It's a bit ambiguous word, I realized. I invented it in a sense because my initial background is economics. Okay? I'm a degree in economics, then a PhD in applied mathematics. But as an economist, for social choice means all decisions that are taken by a community, okay, by a plurality of actors. So this is the main meaning of social multi-criteria. Social choice in economics becomes immediately social multi-criteria evaluation for me. But I realized that some people this word create confusion because they think it's about only social issue. It's not that. Okay? Social, first of all, because means it's about community decisions. Then, of course, it's social also in terms of the fact that you can integrate social concerns, meaning social criteria. Okay? So what is a multi-criterion framework? Basically, it's an integrative framework. It's a model where you can integrate very technical issues, social issues, economic issues, environmental issues, whatever you like in a given problem, okay? That's the main use of it, okay? It's an integrative framework. It's so social also in this sense, you can put social issues inside the whole model, and this is very important because traditionally having social components inside the model was not that easy. And in particular, in the social multi-criteria evaluation framework, we will see today and tomorrow, that there are the possibility to have two integration. One is about evidence, about science. We had the discussion with my friend Torst today what science is. I'm not sure. It's all the philosophy of science of the 20th century is about this. What science is, what is the role of scientists, etc., etc. But to be on the practical, not on this idea of changing the world, basically I think the idea, what the scientists should do is to bring evidence. So in the multi-criterion impact matrix, what you have, when you have this plurality of indicators, basically is the idea that you bring on the table of the evidence you have about that problem. The other point is, as Catherine has said yesterday, that, okay, but social actors, what they want? They have preferences, they have desires, they have opinions. We have also to consider them. And we have to consider them at least in two steps. One step is when you generate options, like in the holidays example. No? The options depends on to whom you are asking. Then on the criteria, okay, the criteria have to be very technical in the sense that they should be measured as much as possible. But why they do exist? Because probably some social actors have very important concerns. Yesterday Paul said, nobody thought the smell was important, but some of the social actors thought it was very important. We have another example in citing an eolic park. No? So we had a lot of windmills. Where to site them? From the technical point of view, engineers say, it's very easy. Where there is a constant flow of wind, it's okay. But then people start to say, okay, but what about noise? What about the fact that they will impact on the landscape? What about the fact that there are some cultural assets over there, some medieval churches, for example? I don't want the windmill just close to the medieval monument. So you see that when you take into consideration social actors, then you need to put on the table other criteria, other indicators that might be very technical, decibels, for example. I should measure the noise. The noise is about that. We need some evidence, scientific and technical evidence. But the reason why we introduced that criterion there was basically because some social actors asked. So it's an iterative process between social actors and technical people and policymakers. We have to consider this interaction in the whole process. Otherwise, the risk of failure is very, very high. A standard question I get is, but this is nice, but it will take a lot of time. Yes, it needs time, because you start all the interaction, you need to consult social actors, the scientists, policymakers, etc., etc. But it also saves time. For example, in citing an eolic park, the average time is around 10 years because you will get always somebody going to court. Okay, there will be some people that do not like what you want to do. They will go to court. Blah 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 blah. This will take a lot of time. If you start involving everybody from the beginning, the risk of arriving at that is much lower. You still may have it, but it's much lower because people feel they will be consulted, their scare, their fears, their desires were considered. The point is that another keyword is transparency. The more transparent you are in all this process, the better. So what basically you want to achieve is a decision framework, a plurality of technical criteria, a plurality of social actors, and we are also interested in their opinions. So in social multi-criteria process, we will have normally two matrices, one technical, one with evidence, a second one with opinions, and we try to have a trade-off between these two. What people want, what science and techniques says, and let's see how we can arrive at a decision. So, from the technical point of view, basically we are the whole process is about building a matrix like this, okay? All this process means how we choose the options we want to evaluate, how we choose the criteria we want to evaluate. Once we have decided this, it starts becoming a more technical issue, okay? The characteristic is we have a plurality of criteria, then each one of these criterion is measured in completely different measurement units. That's very important, okay? We don't need, like for example in cost-benefit analysis framework, everything in money terms. You may have a cost criterion that is measured in dollars, euro, whatever. You might have an environmental impact criterion, a biodiversity criterion, whatever, measured in completely different measurement units, okay? So, a first interesting point is, from the mathematical point of view, we are dealing with a kind of mathematics where you can compare apples and oranges. That's very important point, okay? That's really very important. You don't need to transform things to compare. You are in the so-called incommensurability framework. You can compare incommensurable measures. The second characteristic is that not only can be measured in completely different units measurement, energy, money, biodiversity, etc., but also in different measurement scales. Yesterday you saw with Paul that he basically required an ordinal scale of measurement, no? Which is first, second, third, and so on and so forth. You might have one or more of these criteria measured on ordinal scale. You might have quantitative scale, money, energy, etc. You might have a more qualitative scale, very good, very bad, 3 plus, 2 minus, okay? Everything in the same matrix. This gives a lot of flexibility in real-world application. Because if you have a criterion you can measure, you measure it. If you know the decibels, you put decibels there, okay? But it's much more difficult to put a clear number on the impact on the landscape. Normally, landscape architecture do a kind of qualitative assessment. It's a technical assessment still, it's an expert opinions based on qualitative grounds. You can put also this there, okay? We will see tomorrow when we go more on the Socrates software. You might also use probability distribution, you might use so-called fuzzy numbers where you have an interval, etc., etc. So you can deal with another thing that Paul was talking yesterday, uncertainty. In decision models, you have a lot of uncertainty to deal with. You can do this in the criterion scores, and also another thing that also was mentioned yesterday with sensitivity analysis of result. We will see all this, okay? So basically, what we need to take a decision, we need to have a problem, a decision problem. For example, to buy a new mobile phone. Then we decide which are the dimensions I want to consider in my problem. It might be a technical dimension, an economic dimension, my subjective preferences, the technical structure of the mobile phones, etc., etc. Which are the objective inside of each one of these dimensions. It's very consistent what we saw yesterday with sustainability assessment, with sustainability of environmental remediation. No? There is a plurality of dimensions. Then, which are the objective? From the technical point of view, for example, in the mobile phone example, I would like to maximize performance. I would like to maximize storage, robustness, the life of the battery, the communications characteristics, and so on and so forth. So, when I have clear which are the dimensions I want to consider in sustainability issues, environmental, economic, social dimensions, ethical dimension, and so on and so forth, which are the objectives I want to achieve, then what are the criteria? The criteria depends very much on the problem you are dealing with, the dimension you want to consider, the objectives you want to achieve. Once you have clear that performance is an important objective for you, how you practically measure the options you are consider achieve or not that objective, you need the criterion for that. That in this case may be RAM or may be CPU plus GPU performance. Can be in the case of storage is easy, read-only memory. Robustness, the drop test. you just throw the mobile phone on the ground. That's the way they do, by the way, the drop test. The life of the battery, and so on and so forth. So you can see you get a plurality of criteria that are not coming from the blue. Okay, they are coming, they are there because you decide that a given dimension is important. You want to achieve a given objective. Then you have to find the most consistent technical criterion. As I already told, this criteria may be measured in completely different ways. Okay? And this is the typical multi-criteria impact matrix. So, if this would be let's say a training on only just on the mathematics of multi-criteria decision analysis, I will start from here. Okay? The mathematical problem is we have a set of options, we have a set of criteria, how we aggregate them. In this type of application, what is first of all, I would say more important than mathematics is to build this matrix. Okay? The real problem in the ground is from where these criteria are coming, from where these options are coming, how we get all the evidence. Okay? We have to be very sure that we use the best evidence we can for that problem. And then when we use qualitative assessment, it should be expert opinions. It should be justified as much as possible. In the commission, we have this type of problems. When we, what basically I will do as a policy support is whenever the European Commission wants to introduce new regulation, new directives, etc., you need to prove that they are making the life of the average European citizen better, and you have to consider a plurality of dimensions, basically the environmental, the economic, the social, and the fundamental rights. Okay, that you are not worsening fundamental rights of people. Because, for example, you might have, I just was involved recently in a directive to regulate blood transfusion, etc., or the blood tissues and cells. Let's say transferring parts of your body to another person's body. You can imagine this is about science, but it's a lot about ethics too, okay? You have to consider this plurality of things altogether. You need to have evidence, and you might ask to people, okay, if you don't have numbers, you ask experts' opinion, but then there will be a so-called regulatory scrutiny board, that it's a body, technical body, that see if the work we did is a good one or a bad one, and the first thing they will look is this good, bad, etc. well justified? You have to be very transparent why a given expert says very good, very bad, okay? If you fail in this, they will not accept. So you need to put the evidence there in a more transparent and technically correct way. Once you have this matrix, then the problem begins more on the mathematical side, and that's the reason why we need the software. Yes.
Check if there is any doubt or if it was well understood, because this is really very important for the understanding of what is to come. Everything fine so far? Sure. So, just.
No, no. By the way, in any moment you want to interrupt me because you have any doubt or you want to ask whatever, please do it. I'm very happy to be interrupted. Okay? No problem at all. So, what is the social multi-criteria process? As we saw yesterday, so when we comparing options, we have two basic questions to answer. According to what, according to who? That's the reason we need this interaction between expert and social actors and policymakers. So, as Catherine has said yesterday very clearly, first of all, we need to identify who are the relevant social actors in a given problem, or stakeholders. I like more the word social actor, but it's more common to use stakeholder. Okay, they are more or less synonymous. Understanding what they want. So this is the typical work of social scientists, now where you need to use a plurality of participatory methodology. But what is the value added in using a framework like this? That you have a framework with clear questions to be answered. Okay, that's probably from the practical point of view the added value of having a framework like this. We need what to do in each step and how to do it, okay? Because you can do social participation in many different ways. But here it's clear that I need to know who they are, and this will be relevant in whatever social participation issue. But then here what we need is to understand what they would like to have in terms of options or in terms of concerns. Smell is important or not, so this would be a relevant criterion. Noise is important or not. So we need to consider what the technical people will propose, but also what the people that are living the issue on their skin, on their lives, would like to know, to achieve. So which are their preferences, their opinion, their interests. We know, real life, lobby do exist. So people have also interest to defend. So they try to make this very explicit, very transparent. Why the Consumer Association wanted it, for example, labeling of products. That's very typical result of life cycle assessment. So this label, for example, something under discussion in the European Union is how you label food, drinks, etc. You may imagine that one producer will not be happy to have a label saying alcohol is not good for your health, for example. No? So you have there an interest. It's not a value, it's not a preference, it's really an interest to defend. So you have to consider all these aspects when you want to arrive at a decision. Will be the same, absolutely the same in the energy sector. No? Energy lobbies are very present. No? They are the nuclear lobby, the photovoltaic one, etc., etc. So you have to consider this plurality of interests you have. Once you have a clear idea about this, you get a set of options, a set of criteria that can be used, you arrive at building the multi-criteria impact matrix, okay? What we saw. So that one is the result of this process of interaction, where the decision scientists, the technical people, the stakeholders all together try to define the model of your problem. Again, it's not a descriptive model, it's not understanding the problem, is how we try to change reality according to what we want. Then, as we will see, in reality, this type of models and problems help a lot of understanding better what you want to achieve your preferences and also how the problem is, okay? Because the more you interact and the more you question about an issue, the more you understand about it. As I said, we have two different dimensions. The technical, where the evidence, so you have to put as much evidence as you can on your problem. Then anyway, it's also good just to have the preferences of people. So you have the first interaction, there is where you consider everybody. So social actors are free to propose options, to propose which criteria might be used or not. Another point is we just want to know their preferences, their opinions. It's kind of voting. What you would like to have implemented. This is not about evidence. As I said, preference of people may be coming from their cultural background, their interests, their values, etc., etc. But anyway, we have to consider this, okay? Because it's the real world. So, what science says, as much integrative as possible, but still science, what people would like to have, okay, which their preferences are. In a democratic world, this is very important. And we try then to understand better, okay? Then we need a mathematical aggregation model where we see, according to this criteria and according to this preference, what we can suggest to the policymaker, and we need to explore the uncertainty of this aggregation. And this is the role of sensitivity and robustness analysis, okay? This might be all the steps we go through in a social multi-criteria. As we are seeing in the Maestri project, we are dealing with different case studies where we are applying the social multi-criteria frameworks. It works a lot for environmental remediation. That's the reason when Horst and Katrin had immediately this feeling when the first time we met, and we are exploring this. We are seeing that the environmental remediation, these are very relevant characteristics because you need it. You have all this. You saw also yesterday with Paul what social actors want, how we define criteria, okay? How we aggregate all this to arrive at something, okay? So, the criterion that you saw yesterday, in principle, should be. You saw different approaches. Now, what Paul proposed yesterday is you start with a list of criteria and how you use them in your problem. Here, the point is, I first start with what social actors want, what the technical people want, and then we say which is the list of criteria we may use according to the dimension, preferences, etc., etc. The two things do not exclude each other, okay? They are complementary. You may start with the criteria if you already know which are the let's say, relevant state of that literature in that specific problem, but in the general framework of problems where you might have even environmental remediation problem might be completely different, no? According to mining, to nuclear waste, etc. So it's very important that, okay, we stay as more general as possible. This, for example, in the case, in the work I'm doing in the European Commission, is what we call the ex-ante impact assessment. That in the policy cycle means how we evaluate, how we assess the possible different options we may implement, then we may transmit to the European Parliament for approbation, to be voted. And basically it's very similar, okay? You have the consultation, all the process is by law, you can see it fits perfectly the social multi-criteria framework, okay? That's the reason at some stage I went to the Commission and they are very happy to use this framework. Because you have by law to consult different stakeholders, you have to have different participatory technique and to understand what people want according to a given problem. You have to use all the evidence you have in that particular field, so it's a very important data collection and analysis. Then you have to compare the different options. This is exactly what multi-criteria decision analysis is doing, and we arrive then at a final decision, okay? When you have a ranking of this policy option, the policymaker will decide, okay, this is what we have, we can defend with the regulatory scrutiny board and the European Parliament. It's very close to what may happen in an environmental remediation issue too. And again, we have this issue, how we integrate together evidence and opinions. So, basically, this is the main characteristic of social multi-criteria evaluation. It exists for policy decisions, so decisions that affect the community. You can integrate a plurality of dimensions, very technical, social, etc., etc. You have to bring as much evidence as possible, so scientific integration, but also social integration, what people would like to have, okay? So science and democracy together. That's a very important point. Again, you don't have to take this as a fixed. No? These are all the steps. Of course, everything is very flexible. Depends, this is very important. Don't consider things as, okay, in a bureaucratic way. These are the steps I have to tick the boxes. This will be completely wrong. Any decision, any problem has different characteristics. The model you are using has to fit the problem. Never do the opposite, transforming the reality because this has to fit your model. This would be completely wrong and very practiced. So please, that's a very important message. You have always to adapt your model to your real world problem, not vice versa. For example, this is in Peru, an indigenous community is using all the social multi-criteria idea, but in a very simple way, okay? For example, the problem was preservation of biodiversity of potatoes. This in the Andean world is something very, very important for them, culturally speaking. There is an economic problem. Not everything can be preserved, so how we decide which biodiversity to keep in a given community. It's a very personal issue. Each family even, okay, has its own biodiversity heritage. And who are the social actors? Only the female part of the community in reality, okay? So in this case, it was very clear. Who are the social actors? All the women of the community. They are discussing how they score the different criteria they agreed to arrive at the decision. So everything has to be as flexible as possible and should fit your problem. The Socrates software we will see tomorrow is called Socrates because, okay, being social multi-criteria assessment of European policies, but leaving aside that Socrates is my favorite philosopher, but he said something very important. I cannot teach anybody anything, I can only make them think. That's very important when you want to work with real-world policymakers. No policymaker would like to have pushing a button and get a solution, okay? What is important for the policymaker, but also for the plurality of actors involved, is to understand as much as possible the problem you are dealing with, putting a lot of transparency on it, and understanding why a given option is coming to be the winning option. You saw yesterday that with the same set of criteria you arrived at different winning options, okay? Okay, this was done very quickly, it was more on subjective preferences, etc. But even when you score this in the most technical way, it may happen. Okay? So it's very important when you understand that even in the most technical and correct way of doing things, the preferences, the starting assumption you use in your model may create different results. Okay? For example, I use the plurality dimension I'm considering. Is really good picture of the problem or not? What is happening if I change the weight? Weights mean the importance I attach to a given criterion, to a given dimension. Because this may be consequences of what the social actors want. When I consider different social actors, may I use some positive discrimination? For example, the preferences of low-income components of my society may be more important for me if I am a kind of benevolent policymaker that would like to improve the quality of life of my society. Okay? So, as Cardinal said yesterday, ethics is again playing an important role in your models, because decisions basically is how I decide to change the world, and how I decide to change the world is very much an ethical question. Okay? So, it's there. We have to find a way to make this clear, to make this transparent. So what we will have is the multi-criteria analysis, very technical component, the so-called equity analysis, meaning the opinions of people I'm considering, and then we can play with all the uncertainty. We can play with uncertainty in the multi-criteria impact, probability distribution, qualitative criterion, whatever, it's very flexible. And then with this local and global sensitivity analysis, meaning what happens if I change some assumption in the model? We will see this tomorrow, but it's very important that you don't see the software as something kind of artificial intelligence, okay? I ask a question, I get the result. I was very scared to know one of the let's say, kind of frontier research in decision theory is applying artificial intelligence to in the military with Navy, with the submarines, because nobody wants to go into submarines anymore. So the point is how we, in a case, not only self-driving, but might even decide if should use a missile, this type of things. I think it's very scary, to be honest. As a decision analysis expert, I trust many technical issues, but I think that finally the computation is not the decision. This is also very important, okay? A model, whatever model you use, is creating computations, it's creating information, is creating transparency, but I think the best way to take a decision is a human. I might be wrong, okay, that's my personal opinion, but I think it's very important. So, just for completing all the information we have for tomorrow to understand better the Socrates, I will also to give very, very basic information on the mathematics it uses. So, before I go to that part, I would like if you have any doubt, question, or whatever at this stage, okay? So, the use of social multi-criteria is a framework, a clear framework, where you can integrate technical issues, ethical issues, democratic issues, all together. Okay? The Socrates software is helping in putting the questions you have to answer during the process. Okay? So see it as a help in structuring the problem. Okay? Because it will start asking which are the options you want to evaluate, which are the dimensions you want to integrate, which are the objectives you want to achieve. Okay? So it's making very clear questions that help you in structuring as much as possible your decision problem. Once you have built this model, then to have a piece of software is very important, because as we will see in a moment, the type of mathematics involved is a combinatorial mathematics, and without a software, it's simply impossible. Okay? That's the reason why, even if the problem was very well known even in the Middle Ages, it has becoming a branch, first of applied mathematics, then also of economics, decision theory, etc., only at the middle of the 60s of the past century. Okay, so it's quite very recent part of science, but just because without computers was impossible. No? It's a clear case where we may immediately see the importance of computers and the way they change is also many things in our lives, also the way we take decisions. So, any doubt or question at this point? No? I hope this means everything very clear. Okay, we have a question.
Wait a minute. Important of having question is that you can trigger thinking on other people with your question. So it's very welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Giuseppe. I have maybe a little confirmation about what you say, so that we create many categories in the software, right? And then they compute, and the computational maybe can be ranked, but we can choose not the higher rank, but maybe the lower. But this is what we think is the best choice. Yeah, not always the higher, but we can choose the lower, maybe like that, or what?
Okay, I understand your question. So, first of all, why it's important local and global sensitivity analysis? Because you have to test how robust your ranking is. Because, for example, there are cases where if you change slightly the weights, you get different solutions. So you have to know that, okay? So you have cases where the option is very robust. So whatever you do, it's clear which is the winner. So no problem at all. There are other cases where, according to the way you put weights or you use or not a given option, a given dimension or a given criterion, things may change. So as a decision maker, it's very important you know that. Okay, you have to know how robust results are. For example, I give an example from the real world. If I go to the regulatory scrutiny board saying, I use this vector of weights, this is the most preferred option, they will give me back the document, say, I don't mind, I don't want this result, reject it, okay? Because they want to know what happens if I change weights. It's very, very simple issue. So it's very important we do this type of simulations. So this is about robustness. The second point is a bit different. And this is also very real world point. That is, the evidence-based matrix, the multi-criteria matrix, can say option A is the winner, then you have B, C, D. Then the opinion-based, the voting of social actors may say, oh, I agree, A is what we want. So there is no conflict, very well. You might have a case where the most preferred option is A, but what people want is B. This is the second best. Then as a policy maker, you may think, okay, what I do? B is still second best, so technically speaking, is not a bad option. It is what all people want. No, as if I am a politician, I like also to be popular. So, okay, why not? I do what people want, but still is defensible from a technical point of view. Another case is that A, B, C, D is the technical result, but what people want is D. It's exactly the last. This, of course, is much more complex, because you may decide D because, for example, a given lobby that is close to policymaker is what they want. But this would be transparent. So you have to be ready to defend why you are choosing D. So what a study like this is putting is a lot of constraints on arbitrariness. Okay? If you do something like this, a policymaker can still decide, but there are constraints. I can decide D, but I have to justify why. For example, I had cases in a real application like that, and we have one also in the maestry applications, and in all these cases, I must be sincere, no policymaker never said, okay, I do what people want, irrelevant from the technicalities. On the contrary, they said, no, I would like to do what is more technically defensible. I will justify why to the people, okay? For example, in a case I was involved at the commission, it was clear there was a lobbying behavior. All the social actors involved, there were a lot of economic consequences on the regulation, so they were scared to lose something, okay? So they say, no, status quo, we want business as usual, all of them. But the people at the commission say, no, it's clear that science is saying something completely different, so I will do something else. Because this is very clear, it's lobbying behavior, who minds? So depends on the policymaker. In the case we have in the maestry, was exactly the same. The government involved in that case study said, okay, this is what science is saying, we will try to communicate as much as possible with stakeholders, making clear why what they would really want cannot be a good option. So, it depends very much on your framework and on your, let's say, on the framework of your problem, on the policymaker you have, on the social actors you have. So, that's the reason these words are very important. It's not an automatic solution. It's a way to put transparency on the problem, to understand better your problem, to put constraints on arbitrariness, to put light, finally, okay? Because you have to consider that my own decision might be a computer decision, because I put all the ingredients that are relevant for me. But these are social decisions. So you have to consider a lot of things, including a lot of ethical issues. For example, talking about social actors' participation. What about if the decision is affecting an indigenous, I'm going very much in this stream, but an indigenous community that has no interaction with other people. You don't consider them, or you are ethically obliged to consider what will happen if a given option is implemented that will affect the community. You see, you still have a social actor, but it's not really participation. It's, okay, they do exist. What I do? There is an ethical imperative there. So ethics is always part of the analysis. Exactly as Catherine explained yesterday. I hope I answered your question.
I think yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. I have a question. Have you make... Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry. I have a question. Have you make intercomparison this result from software? Is it the best decision or not? Is it possible to use like SPSS software using Likert score or not? Thank you.
If if I understand well, your question is a bit different issue. You are saying that if you can do a kind of ex post evaluation, is this what you are asking?
No, he's asking about doing a kind of a validation of
Yeah.
the Socrates with other softwares.
Okay, so there are two issues. One is that after some time you implement the decision, you can validate the decision. This is what is called ex post. The other is a bit different issue. That is, how you validate. This is exactly what I was going to explain now. The mathematics involved. Okay? You have to consider one important thing. In the world of multi-criteria decision analysis is decision model. This means that everything depends on where you want to implement. Now, a big difference is between compensatory and non-compensatory model. Meaning, if I get a very good economic performance, this will compensate a very bad environmental performance, yes or not? When you aggregate the plurality, I'm looking for the famous compromise. The famous compromise can be a balanced decision where I need to have something that is reasonably good in all dimensions I'm considering. This is called non-compensatory aggregation. You might, on the other side, having something completely compensatory. For example, in the stock exchange, if I invest in stock and bonds and I lose money in a stock, but I get a lot of money in another stock, who minds? So compensability is good, okay? Because what I want is that in the whole aggregation of the money I invested, I get more money. Okay? So it's good or it's bad compensatory or non-compensatory aggregation. Depends where you implement, which is your problem. So why what you say is not desirable? It's not desirable because unless you don't get exactly the same type of mathematical algorithm, it's not like to have a Kental correlation. Whatever software you use, you get the same. Here, it's a very interesting point because being very heavy mathematical theory, still you have a basic issue. The same problem doesn't arrive at the same solution if you use different models. One of the main reasons is this compensability, non-compensability issues. Okay? So that's the reason it's better not to do that. Of course, you can and check which is the variable. It's a kind again of robustness analysis you can do. I would not particularly advise doing that unless you don't want to know, for example, what happens if you use a completely compensatory model in your problem and what. What you do, what the type of mathematics used in Socrates is non-compensatory, because leaving that we want to use this as an integrative assessment of what this dimension in policy dimension, to have this complete compensability will not be a good idea, okay? Because you are in this case making a fake news in a sense, because you say, oh, I integrate environment, social, blah, 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 but then if I have a very good performance in one of these, we overcompensate on the others. Will not that really what we want to do, no? So that's very important. We are here in the world of non-compensability. Then in this world of non-compensability, what we are using is what it has been agreed that is one of the most correct way of aggregation, that is called the median ranking. The issue is it's very difficult to compute. That's the reason we need to have numerical algorithms, etc., etc. I think if you agree that this stage, I will start this more mathematical part tomorrow because I think it's too late now. So we might, because it will not take long, okay? It will take 10 minutes just to, not to go in all the details, but just to show you what the software is providing when we play with it, which is one of the major computation is doing, and then I will show you how to play with it. So, I don't know, Horst, what do you think? Because we have to start again at 1:30.
Yes.
So it's better we stop here, but tomorrow morning we have a lot of flexibility, so I can use just 10 minutes for
Yeah,
this.
with the old agenda. So what will we have now?
Lunch.
Oh,
Because if you want to have lunch, we have only 1 hour, so it's better to stop.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. But I have two questions for you based on the very nice questions that were asked. The first one is about the choosing not the best, what you see is the first solution, but the last solution. How do you take care about the number of people that are representing different social actors? For example, you may have a community with thousands of people, and you may have another social actor that represents the interest of much less people. So this is one question. And the second question, I understood you mentioned that it's not a good idea to make comparisons of model tools results, because one might adopt some sort of logic and the other one might adopt something else. So does it mean that this decision must be made before you select the kind of tool you want to use in your multi-criteria decision analysis? Is that right?
I go very quickly to both questions. First question is very easy. You can play with weights you give to the social actors,
including the number of them.
It depends, because if you use the software, by default, it will propose same weight to all social actors. Then you can decide, okay, but this social actors in reality is representing 40% of my population. I can give to these social actors, if I want, 50% of weight. Or another way around is, this is a minority, but exactly because it's a minority, I want that group to weigh more. It's an ethical position, okay? So both are correct in a sense. It depends very much on on this case, I would say, of the policymaker preferences. It can be done. We have all the flexibility to do it. Again, is the classical assumption that may change the result. That's the way I said it's very important. It's not an automatic way, okay? According to the assumption you put in your analysis, you may get different results. But this applies to everything, to cost-benefit analysis, to everything, to whatever model you use for optimizing. The point is, let's try to be as transparent as possible on this assumption. The second question, yes. I remember I had this discussion last year in Vienna. It's very important, the consistency. For example, when you use the software, there are some software that propose you different aggregation, but then you have to take care a lot of the consistency. For example, if you are in the non-compensatory aggregation world, you use weights as importance. That I think is the correct way, because, for example, 40% of my population, I can attach 40% of importance. If I am using a compensatory mathematics, so whatever other, I don't know, analytical hierarchy process, so multi-attribute utility theory, are two examples of compensatory aggregation methods. The weights I should use there are trade-offs, meaning if I increase 100% the performance on this criterion, how much I should reduce on the other? You see that the way you get the weights is completely different. You have to have very clear that If you want to use trade-off as weights, you go for compensatory, you get that. If you want to, for non-compensatory, you have to go to the weights as importance. If you want to use weights as importance, but then you go to multi-attribute utility theory, you are creating an issue, in the sense you are doing something wrong, okay? So, let's keep the basic reason why we use mathematical models. We cannot avoid, using mathematics, I think what has been very wrong in the past, above all in social sciences, more than engineering and other science. Above all in economics, economists, we were trying to say, okay, if I have a mathematical model, then it's an optimal solution, it's blah, 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 blah. It's not true, okay? A model depends on the assumption you put in the model. That's it. Then, what mathematics, the added value is putting consistency. Meaning, if I built a given multi-criteria impact matrix, a given social impact matrix, the results I want to see have to be correct results. In mathematical terms means consistent with the information I have. If I lose this because I'm using inconsistent components in my model, I lose the reason why to use mathematics, because it's a bit like using dices, okay? So it's very important we have this very clear. At least this basic difference. What is compensatory means trade-offs, means this offset of different damage. If you are in the non-compensatory, you might use solder, you might use electre, for example. It's a non-compensatory way of doing the things where you are sure that weights are importance coefficients and non-trade-offs, and what you get is a non-compensatory result. So this is the basic, let's say, the basic thing you have to decide before it. Yes, when you have the matrix, not before it, when you have the matrix. Once you have the matrix, according to the problem you have, compensatory is important, compensation is important, is not important, yes, not, is desirable, more or less, or not desirable, how we use weights. But then, please be consistent with that.
Excellent. So I think we should break for a lunch, but all good, sir? So the point is, we break for lunch, but three things I want to mention. You heard about mastery many times, but you should be wondering, what the hell is this? What kind of project is this? So Catrinelle will introduce in her presentation the project. More important, the project is open for people that want to be part of it, to contribute to it, but also want to present a kind of a study case in which the experts, Giuseppe, Catrinelle, and other people who work with the project can help you to address a problem that you have that would be amenable to a participatory decision-making process. So you can candidate yourself to be a part of the team, but also to have one specific issue that you are dealing with in your country. For example, Poços de Caldas would be a very good example for that. In Argentina as well, as you need to decide about remediation strategies. That would be the only condition that we put forward, is that the result of the exercise should be made public. Otherwise, we will be doing consultancy, and that's not the purpose of the agency, but we want to inspire others and to disclose the results. Of course, the relevant details might not be disclosed of interest, but that will be discussed when we put the terms of reference in place. So you will hear from Catrinelle, who, by the way, is the chair, the president of the project. Second thing, for those who want to join the restaurant, the address is there, the restaurant is there, and I will collect if you can pick up, bring it to me, I will pass to our PIN, and she will confirm the number of people that will be. Oh, we have quite a big turnout. Excellent. And The only comment I want to make, Giuseppe, if you
Yeah.
allow me,
Of course.
is that as I demonstrated on Monday, all these things we are discussing needs to take into consideration what are the regulations prevailing in a specific country. And in that sense, as an IAEA staff, I have to say that we should not violate the legal
Absolutely.
framework that prevails in the country. For example, if there is a kind of limitation for releases, it is set in 1 millisievert, that is the boundary condition that we need to work within. Important in the case of remediation, and this is why we are working in this area, because we have a range between 1 and 20 in which we need to make decisions about what is the residual dose, what is the residual levels of contamination that we will need to decide. And the international community, in different occasions, asked the agency to provide guidance how to make this decision, because it's a really big range, it's 1 order of magnitude of difference, and what to decide will depend on agreed upon decision with these different social actors, and that will be exactly a multi-criteria decision analysis with a social dimension, and now bringing together the notion of sustainability to it. If there is a sense that the regulation is not appropriate, and I can have examples where regulations are not appropriate, then it's not about to disrespect the regulation, but to make the case to change the regulation. And that is essentially what happens, for example, with the IAEA. Because if the member states that you are part of, and you are part of the agency, your member state, come to the agency and says, look, this standard is not working. This is not doing any good. We have sentiments that this should be given a second thought. Definitely this will trigger in the agency, in the secretariat, people like me, the obligation of put together the different committees we have to give different interpretation for that particular situation. For example, we discussed about safe enclosure. That is a position the member states took not to be the best or the preferential or even an acceptable solution. But you can demonstrate that in that specific case, due to the constraints that the country faces, and also in Hungary, that solution, despite the fact that it's not recognized as the best solution or appropriate solution in the IAEA safety standards, is the best course of action for the country, and end of story, right? So we might wish to review the standards in the sense to accommodate some kind of reality that is being proved that needs to be reviewed. I gave you another example, this 1 Becquerel program that is used for norm. This is a big headache because member states, specifically in Europe, take this 1 Becquerel program by the letter. If it is above, no conversation. If it is below, everything can be done. But it has been interpreted that in many situations, you can have materials with 1 Becquerel program above this level, and still these materials can be used. And this is why the clearance level document of the agency had to think about the idea of a specific clearance, among other reasons. So this is what I say. The regulations are dynamic, they need to adapt to reality, but one thing is to go against the regulation framework, regulatory framework. The other thing is to see if this is not working, then it has to be changed. So this is what I wanted to say. Let's reconvene 1:30. We might be a little bit before our team, my colleagues there supporting. My friend, we will be 1:15 to test the connection of the our presenter. Okay, thank you very much. And 1:30 we will have the sustainability and circularity, not in remediation anymore, but in decommissioning. And we will see what are the similarities, what are the conversation that we will have with Christina Gilling. Thank you very much and see you after lunch.
Just one final thing I forgot. I uploaded, you see under my name, you have all the presentation, plus some papers or buttons. I put two different folders, one on sustainability and the other one on multi-criteria. According to your interests, and if you wish to know more on technicalities, etc., there you have all the material. Okay, it's not compulsory reading at all, but just for the one for you that would like to have all the technicalities involved, you can find them there.